Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbaugh. Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about a new offering we have here at Book of the Day. We have now launched Book of the Day Plus, which is a new way to support our work here at NPR. When you sign up, you get access to a special feed where you can listen to our new episodes sponsor-free. Nothing is changing about our regular show, but Book of the Day Plus is another way to help us keep giving you the books coverage you love. So please do sign up. We really appreciate it. You can find out more at plus.npr.org/book of the day. All right, on to today's show. A question to the fellas, to the guys listening real quick. If you were lucky enough to have a mom who sometimes took you out on, mom-son dates, how great were they, right? I mean, like my mom and I would go into the city together, hit up Filene's basement, head to Barnes & Noble, get some soup in Chinatown. It was the best. Until, for whatever reason, they just stopped happening. Maurice Vellekoop recounts a similar memory at the beginning of his graphic memoir, I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together, where his relationship with his mom gets strained over him being gay. And he told NPR's Ayesha Rascoe about how the really harsh stuff his mom said to him over his sexuality stuck with him for years. That's ahead.
This message comes from Apple Card. Earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, every day. Then grow it at 4.50% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account with Apple Card. Visit apple.co/card calculator to see how much you can earn. Apple Card is subject to credit approval. Savings available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
I'm so glad we had this time together.
In the 1960s and 70s, at the end of every episode of her variety show, Carol Burnett would sing this goodbye.
Seems we just get started.
The song is called I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together.
Carol features quite prominently in my childhood. I was obsessed with her.
I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together is also the title of artist Maurice Vellekoop's new graphic memoir. Vellekoop says it's perfect because it works on more than one level.
As a straightforward statement, but then you can also read it kind of sarcastically, too.
Vellekoop grew up in a world of duality, and there was maybe no better example than the relationship he had with his parents. His memoir opens with one of his favorite memories, a Remembrance Day trip to a department store in the city with his mother.
We lived in a suburb of Toronto, and it was very plain. There was not a lot of decoration anywhere. And on this magical day, she and I set out for downtown Toronto. And we're going to go shopping and have lunch. And downtown is this magical world for me because it's full of interesting things and beauty. And my mother says to me, at 11 o'clock on Remembrance Day, the world is going to come to a complete halt for a minute's silence to respectfully remember these soldiers. And a little 5-year-old me is skeptical of this idea. And when we do get downtown to this wonderful world, lo and behold, at 11 o'clock, we're on an escalator and it stops. All of the people in the store bow their heads and pray for these people.
Maurice Vellekoop's mother was both glamorous and caring, and this really comes across in his illustrations. She has big, bouffant hair as she smiles sweetly at her youngest. But as he grew up and came to realize he was gay, her delicate sensitivity turned rigid in the shadow of her religious beliefs.
At the beginning of the book, we're in complete, total harmony. We're madly in love with each other. But this problem of my sexuality becomes more and more plain as the book progresses. And she is increasingly nervous about it because the faith that is so central to her identity does not accept homosexuality. So she has this growing realization as the book goes on that I'm pretty gay, and that's not going to change, and she can't accept it.
And talk about your father, what you learned about your father that maybe shaped your perspective on him.
Well, much later as an adult, I started going to therapy and I started to sort of untangle this web and this mess of stuff, and to sort of try to understand this man who was very, very volatile, but also surprising in many ways. Like when I did come out to him, he just came out and said, "Well, it's going to be a hard life, but you're always welcome here at a home." So it's kind of surprising because you just never knew how he would react to anything. One thing I learned about him way late were some of the experiences that he had during the war. Men of my father's generation did not speak about such things. He spent a lot of World War II. So Holland was occupied very early in the war. And young Dutch men were either being conscripted into the German army or taken into Germany to work in camps, like work camps, which were very dire places. And that's where my dad spent a large part of the war. His father had died during the war. His mother had already died in the 1930s. So he had 6 brothers, and 2 of them were living in the family home. And when he came home from the war, they said, "Oh, you're back. Where were you thinking of living?" And that's when he decided to come to Canada. And what a terrible thing. I mean, I had no notion of that. And it explains a lot of the rage and the anger and the resentment that he bore and that he took out on us as his family.
Speaking of about the book, I also have to talk about how this book is beautifully illustrated. You are an artist and you grew up and you love Disney. Do you think that some of that style influenced your visual style for this book?
Yeah. So there was always this longing for beauty and escape. Again, going back to that first scene, like escaping this dreary suburb and going downtown where the buildings were old and fascinating, and there was ornament. So I was always attracted to all of that, and it led it to a real sort of obsession with fantasy. And so I wanted to include that as a contrast to this very stark suburban, very working blue collar kind of world that I grew up in.
And while Maurice Vellekoop's illustrations may sometimes look like something from Disney's Sleeping Beauty, his memoir is unmistakably for adults. It depicts how long it took him to have his first romantic and sexual relationships. And that's important, he says, because there are still many young people who grow up in conservative religious households who are trying to figure out who they are and what their lives could be. He doesn't want them to waste time like he did.
When I was 14, when I got that book from my mother that basically said, your choices are celibacy or eternal damnation, I took that pretty seriously. And I tried so hard to be celibate and to banish those thoughts that I thought were wrong. And that internal struggle is very damaging. And I carried that stuff onward with me through the coming out and everything, because I wasn't conscious of how deep all of that stuff went.
Yeah.
And then it's all tied in with disappointing her too. So the bearing of it and then the consciousness of it are 2 different things that eventually I start exploring.
And so I guess when you ultimately look at this, is there a key lesson that you feel like you learned on this journey?
Hmm. Oh boy, that's a key lesson. Well, I think, yeah, it's all about love, this book, And so when we have a lot of self-hatred for whatever reason, if we can overcome that, it's like RuPaul always says, if you can't love yourself, how are you gonna love anyone else?
Yeah. That's Maurice Vellekoop. His new full-length graphic memoir is called I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Ayesha.
Spend time in any American city, and you'll likely encounter someone with untreated psychosis. Lost Patients is a new podcast examining our maze-like system for treating severe mental illness, which loses patients to an endless loop between the streets, jail, and hospitals. Does it have to be this way? For the history, the reality, and hopefully some solutions, listen to Lost Patients from KUOW and the Seattle Times, part of the NPR network.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Rosetta Stone, the perfect app to achieve your language learning goals no matter how busy your schedule gets. It's designed to maximize study time with immersive 10-minute lessons and audio practice for your commute. Plus, tailor your learning plan for specific objectives like travel. Get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off and unlimited access to 25 language courses. Learn more at rosettastone.com/NPR.